It's 6:31. Let's get this meeting started. Would somebody like to lead the pledge for those who'd like to participate?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Nottingham Planning Board. It's July 8th, 2026. It's 6:31 p.m. We're at the Town Office Building, meeting room number 1. So the only hearing that we have on our agenda for tonight is case 26007, site plan review for Precision Cut Lumber LLC at 123 Old Turnpike Road. Before we get into that, I'm going to have the members go around and introduce themselves, starting to my right.
Carrie DeGeorge.
Andrew Lichtenwalder.
Drew Stevens, Chair.
Danny Arsenal, Vice Chair.
Larry Haney, SRPC.
Tracy Stickney, Land Use Coordinator.
Thank you. And we are not going to have Glenn, Skip, or Adam Ryan here tonight, so we might get Chris Evans if he shows up. Okay, case number 26-007, SPR's Precision Cut Lumber LLC, 123 Old Turnpike Road, application from Ian McKinnon, PE of Jones and Beach Engineers on behalf of Precision Cut Lumber LLC, requesting a site plan review. The intent of this project is to construct 2 56-foot by 100-foot chicken houses to expand the poultry and egg business. That actually has been reduced to 1 building. The affected property is located at 123 Old Turnpike Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, and is identified as tax map number 4, lot 1-1. The first hearing for this case was on April 8th, 2026. We had a site walk on April 15th. The case was continued from May 13th and May 27th, as well as June 10th. Okay.
Thank you. Ian McKinnon with Jones Beach Engineers. As mentioned, we are down to 1 proposed chicken house as of the last meeting. It's a brief update. Since the last meeting, the third-party report was completed. I know we have the consultant here tonight. And the only plan change that came out of that kind of process, we did a very thorough kind of on-site walk. There was kind of some good things pointed out. And then one thing that was asked of us was to start providing a little bit more information as to essentially if we could take a stab in the dark at estimating a projected volume of clean out waste from the chicken house or the barn itself. And so the applicant worked through kind of using USDA guidelines, which are designed for much larger kind of almost commercial operations, like we're talking tens of thousands of birds. So what we've done is he prorated that kind of just down to this flock size. And that information was provided to Todd, the consultant, and simultaneously we also then proposed a reduced size for a compost or manure pad with some changes that we can walk through if the board would like. And so all of that we kind of did prior to the report being filed, mostly so that that could be reviewed and recommendation or concurrence provided to the board through that report. And so like I said, the compost area was moved further north. It is still shown slightly encroaching on that 100-foot setback. I know we still have a waiver request out there. If the board wishes not to grant that waiver request or feels that they don't have the authority to, then we do have the ability to slide it slightly farther north. The reason we may still ask the board to take action on that waiver request is that one of the things that I think we've kind of seen by reviewing the report, being familiar with some of the NRCS methods, is that the exact size and location, a lot of that is somewhat fluid and really kind of a hands-on process with the USDA field staff. Like I said, that's still, we're still waiting for that site visit to happen. I think Wade got a call that the staff member had to push about a month or so. It sounds like she had some grant stuff and some other items that it's grant season, so it took precedent. He's gonna basically be on her start, which usually sounds like late summer, they start kind of the next round of projects that could potentially receive grant funding or just kind of their work queue for the next 12 months. That this is kind of their start. Is kind of the feedback that we received. But he's still eagerly awaiting. We're still on the list that the USDA will come and start this process with us. That's mentioned a couple times in the report. So the exact sizing of that, and this is per the USDA, is really kind of fluid in that we tried to make a best assumption based on certain things like bedding depth, style, frequency of clean out. And I think I know Todd's here tonight. I think he spoke and said they seemed reasonable based on what parameters we do know and can control at this point. Other than that, we did have time to read the report, and I think a lot of it kind of concurred that, yes, we're in the right direction. There's a couple things that identified that the final plans or through the USDA process, we need to essentially choose a flock management style. There was 2 options there, so I think I won't try and jump ahead. I think Blair will go through his staff report where I think he touched upon that. And I had a chance to read Blair's staff report as well and have some discussion points. And I read through the potential conditions of approval too, and figure we can talk to that, but I'll try not to jump ahead too much.
All right. Any questions from the board? I've got a question. So with regard to the manure composting pad, how much do you expect that size to potentially change? Because it looks like it's 5 feet or less over that 100-foot setback.
Yeah, and that's it's still kind of an unknown. So there's the bin sizes, they're chosen as 20 by 20 bins right now. And that's based on, again, that volume that we estimated and provided, and I think the report concurred, seems like a realistic assumption, and then we essentially assumed like a cone shape volume, so that 20 by 20 allows for room that when this pile is turned over, which it has to be frequently, you're not getting spillover either in the back or to the adjacent bins. The number of bins is really based on the frequency. I talked to Wade about this a little bit. I think the 3 here should work based on the size of this building. The only time you might expect all 3 to be kind of full and waiting is going to be if you have a winter period where maybe the process slow down or something like that, because that process for the composting can vary. Again, there's just a lot of different variables that sometimes we can control and sometimes we can't as to how fast things compost and how much is produced. It was interesting to learn about some of the different bedding styles that can improve the turnaround time, essentially a partial composting in place, which was kind of interesting to learn about. Those are all things that would get worked out. Again, it seems like with the USDA process, they become familiar with the project and then start to get into site-specific recommendations based on their guidelines. So I do think there's room to slide that north if the board doesn't want to entertain. My only concern there is that the goal is to at least have some of the bin offset from the barn, just to provide a little bit more room for turning motions for a tractor. When we're assuming in this scenario that they might, the final product is in that the planned south bin, and that puts it also closer to where a truck can kind of back up, and less distance that you're handling the material to, then there's less chance of, at that point it's a fully composted manure, but we'd like to keep as much in the bucket and then in the truck as possible, so that shortening that distance is a little more efficient for the operation.
Those bin sizes, are those adequate for the manure that is going to be taken from the building, or also inclusive of the material that needs to be scraped from the outdoor fenced area? I'm assuming you're going to go that way because the acreage doesn't allow for you to do the other option.
You're correct. I mean, likely it would go that way. We would work with the USDA in terms of sizing that. But yeah, from the sizing, it is designed for the building because that's, will ideally be a concrete pad that we can collect all of that. Each cleaning is, we're not digging into the earth. Because the outdoor area, they're spreading out. It's not expected that we can pick up the waste outside, like we won't be scraping because that also could impact vegetation growth.
We'll have to
On
wait
the
for the
outdoor.
consultant on that. I
Yeah,
thought
so that
was
could be a
part of
question,
I
but
thought that was
ours,
part of-
yeah, the composting, the collection of the waste and then the subsequent composting of it is for waste collected out of the building, because it's concentrated within that footprint.
Thank you.
So instead of sliding the pad up, could you pivot it out to the right slightly to get it out of that and still, that would actually maybe give more access for a tractor to do turnarounds, and it looks like the level spreader could move back a little bit too to
Yeah.
accommodate that, just as another option.
Yeah, I don't think it's a possible, that's not a problem. I try and keep things parallel or perpendicular to other things, so that's
Sure,
why
yeah.
honestly, when we drew it, that's just the natural way that I draw it. But yes, a slight 5-degree rotation would probably bring us out of that setback. And you could imagine the bin pad area and the level setter would just rotate together.
Any other questions from the board before we let Blair get into his staff report?
All right, I don't think I need to go through this point by point unless that's what we're looking for, but I try to amend the prior staff reports with the cross-outs indicating what has been addressed. And then there is a few more that have been added now that we have the agricultural report. It does seem like containment of the chickens is the sort of major outstanding issue. Just getting our hands on a handle on what the plan is there. Will they be confined to the building, or if they're going to roam in the range? What kind of containment will there be for keeping the flock on site, keeping predators out, and keeping them outside of the detention area, so that can stay vegetated. So that was, those are the first two items. The applicant has indicated they're still trying to work with the NRCS. The agricultural report has mentioned several things that should be addressed through that report. For example, the pest management, the integrated pest management, the nutrient, manure, and compost management, range runoff management, flock containment, those sorts of things. So one thing that we would need to know is, as part of conditions, what's the timeline on that? And we should set a timeline for having that report sent back to the town. I did pose the question and would like to hear a response about how the proposed business of composting the chicken waste and selling it complies with the solid waste section of the Nottingham zoning ordinance. It does mention agricultural waste, so I just want to hear that. And then talking about the site surveyor obtaining a stamp on the plan. I had emailed Ian, we were back and forth a couple times today. I was trying to check on something with him regarding the DOT permit. If you look at the driveway that was part of the plans that were approved, the plan set that was approved in 2021, it kind of has you coming off of Route 4 and it's just like a straight shot in, and it looks like. And then of course we see the plans today that have it sort of more softly coming onto the site. until Ian had sent me the DOT permit, I wasn't sure if what they're showing today was actually in fact approved. It does look like that was the case. The DOT permit included the plan set, a revised plan set from 2021 that shows what it looks like today. So that looks like it's been confirmed, that is, what they installed meets the DOT permit. And that sort of went in line with this surveyor piece, was I didn't know if he kind of freehand drew in this, the driveway, but it does look like that was part of the DOT permit, so I just wanted to circle back on that one. The last piece was, did we get a signed document?
Yep, I got one here. It was the missing, not the, I'm not really sure what it's acknowledging, because I think we signed it.
I think technically the application is 2 pages.
Because we have to say, we signed the actual, the previous application page, and then they hide these other owner signatures on here for some reason.
Okay, good.
Dual signatures. Yes, I was gonna mention that.
And then, I have conditions to be completed before the signing of the final plans. Conditions that are subsequent, that will happen as the applicant is effectively operating. We should set a timeline on that. I put in a TBD to get this stuff done. I've already taken off the one about the DOT permit because I just included it because I hadn't yet heard back from you when I sent it out, so
Sure.
I take that one out. There are other ones that we can update as we go, if that's the direction of the board. And then a listing of findings of fact. Again, all to be edited. These are just recommendations, but I had to give us a starting place.
So with the driveway permit, didn't the original one that was obtained in 2021 have, I think maybe it was the first condition of it that said that if there was any further development of the site or something like that, that a permit would need to be reapplied for?
Yes, normally with the DOT, it's kind of their catch-all. So it's either, yes, a new permit, so if you increase the intensity, there's thresholds that DOT has based on the use. Or you email them and they say, no, this does fall under that threshold. If I were to email, and I think a standard condition of approval is normally either get concurrence from DOT or obtain a DOT permit, which was a condition of the previous permit. I mean, if the board so wishes, it's at this point I would email DOT District 6 and say, here's the proposal. They're gonna ask, the one question, I've dealt with this a couple times on change of use where it's actually just a small increase in trucks. They basically say, how many trucks are you expecting? And this would be single digits on a weekly basis. I'd say even 5 or less. I've had large warehouse projects that are greater than that, and they do not require, they basically send you an email that you can save, and that's the extent of their approval, but we can get that.
Just to have it on file, just to check the box. I think that would be, as you said, it would normally be like a standard condition. We can add it to the conditions that either apply for a new one or get confirmation from DOT that you're.
Yeah, that's fine. I suspect we won't be asked to do a new one just because of the thresholds. Like I said, we have the signed application page, the redundant signature of the applicant, but we got it. And then you had number 7 on here. Applicant should show that delivery trucks can safely enter the site or turn around. As part of that DOT process, the reason it is, I think it's 28.
I did see that.
It has like truck turning, so there's no larger trucks will be expected for this. So it's, we kind of oversized it for the logging trucks that deliver to the site. So as long as that's satisfactory, that
I think
nothing with this operation will require a larger vehicle than what was approved by DOT.
Right, to deliver the eggs and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that, and so I'm fine with that. Again, before I sent this out, before I had gotten the response back.
Yeah.
So I left it in there. I see it now, so I think we're good to go on at least those couple of things.
The other one was just, if you just make 11, 12, 13, like you said, I think those are more, maybe they'll follow in terms of any discussion of the board with your potential conditions of approval, but I did look at number 14, which was the asking about how we comply or the applicability of the Article 4E solid waste. I did read that, and it's essentially, I'll just read it so that nobody else in the crowd has to find. Only the town of Nottingham or cooperative in which the town of Nottingham is a member may own and or operate a collection facility, transfer station, transshipment facility, compaction facility, landfill, incinerator facility, or other facility for the handling of transfer, treatment, disposal, or other use or disposition of solid waste, refuse, trash, garbage, and or other protrusible material. Of course, I had to look up what protrusible material was, and it's basically it's from what I gathered, it is considered food scraps or animal byproducts like dead animals or poultry processing wastes. And so I guess my conclusion on that is that we wouldn't qualify because we're not processing chickens. It didn't seem that animal waste was one of them. I don't think it's ever come up on a previous agricultural project, but our interpretation is that we didn't qualify under that, and that we're managing our compost per the USDA regulations that govern in that sense. But and then the surveyor stamp, I think, was I think the waiver request kind of last time on the boundary, because the surveyor won't stamp a boundary if it's not resurveyed. So with the waiver request, I think that I'm not sure I could get anybody to stamp it, which is why we kind of asked for that. But
I thought it was just for the wetlands. I didn't realize it would be for the boundary.
yeah, because it was for we had the topography and the boundary survey. But when your proposed conditions of approval to precedent, I think it was previously, but like my PE stamp will be on these. That I don't have a survey requirement to put that, so these plans will have my PE stamp on them. And then there was one here, I think it was maybe discussed at the second meeting. I think there was a question, I'm not sure if it was somebody from the public or the board, had asked about potential lighting. The chickens don't like light. Our only anticipation is that maybe there's a potential light over the door, so that a man door, so they can get into the facility, but there's no plan for like parking lot or area lighting.
Yeah, my comment was submit a lighting plan, because that was what was required. I remember you telling us that there was not any planned new lighting.
We don't want it to be like security lighting or anything like that.
Right, it's certainly not motion lighting.
Correct.
So I was just trying to capture without having you to have to submit anything by making a condition.
That's fine. And then there was one I did want to ask. It was just about DES AOT, and it was basically we shall obtain AOT permit or written confirmation from AOT that the permit is not required. And I was curious why it would be required, because I think we addressed it at a previous meeting that we reviewed the AOT. I think it was a comment from the chair. Just we had put a note on the plan because we reviewed the requirements under 150242, which basically defines normal agricultural operations, and it says would not convert more than 20,000 square feet from pervious to impervious, and many of the stone gravel areas actually count as because they're porous. I've actually been there. There's no runoff from much of this area.
That was in the ag report. I may have copied that one in there, thinking that perhaps there was conversations that you guys had that I wasn't privy to, that maybe there was still like an open-ended question here or something.
I think that it was a comment from the chair just asking, obviously that we addressed it on it was sheet C2.1. I think it was in one of the previous revisions. We put note 14 on there, just stating that we had reviewed it and that this proposal, and we have to include the existing operation too, doesn't qualify as 20,000. We didn't convert more than 20,000 square feet as part of the agricultural operation. So my experience with, if I don't have to talk to AOT and I'm reviewing the standards and the thresholds, they don't really want to talk to you because they're busy with a lot of things. So that was I want to mention that.
I am okay with that one, that condition being removed. I remembered us having discussed this and addressing it before, or questioning them, and then they addressed it with us in one of the meetings. So like I said, I left it in because it was in Todd's report, and I just thought maybe there was like an outstanding issue or something that they had discussed or something like that. So
Sure.
I'm fine with that one being pulled out.
Oh, and sorry, one last one, just because I know you broke into precedent and subsequent. It's not numbered, but the second to last under precedent was confirm the treatment train, level spreader, organic filter berms, detention basin, conservation seating is sized and stabilized to treat. Is the intent there that that's confirmed by NRC, like NRCS, or is it? I'm just wondering if that's something that should be under the subsequent, if the subsequent seems to be a lot of the items that we need NRCS to say yes or no or modify. Just because I know the precedent are gonna be items that like he can't pull a single permit for, but the NRCS, and we'll say, I think they've given you no timeline, it could be 12 months, it could be 24 months, they've already rescheduled on him once to delay it a month. So yeah, the TBD is a hard one. It would be impossible to wait to start operating, but and that's why one thing we learned, it was great having obviously Todd's background is that USDA process is purposely fluid, and so it works with existing farms that are fully operational, and it's almost better when they're operating because you actually get real-time data on waste production and stuff like that. So that's why it's kind of an ongoing process to refine the operation. So it's good to hear that firsthand that is kind of how the process goes. So hopefully they stop delaying on us, but we're still on their list.
Yeah, as far as, you know, where it belongs in the list, you know, I can we can let Todd talk about that because that is one of the ones that was included in his.
Yep.
You know, and I have a limited understanding as to what exactly
Sure, no,
we're
understood.
looking for when talking about some of these things, so.
Okay, yeah, I think that was, I mentioned the board, there is still a waiver request, I know we've talked about some variation there, so if the board polled and said they just prefer that we rotate 5 degrees and get out of it, then we could go that route and essentially just revoke the waiver request.
It's a zoning thing, I don't understand, I don't know.
Well, it's our waiver request is about like the qualification of it, so again, if there's uneasiness there, then it would be cleaner just to revoke it.
Storage.
Yeah, it's the storage area definition, so if there's question and there's uncertainty around it, then it might be better if, we'll wait until public comment and stuff like that, and when Todd gets up here, but just throwing that out there, it is on the table, and I just wanna make sure we either revoke it or the board votes on it.
Okay.
I think that's,
Small question
Yep.
about there was originally no extra lighting, but the building might have a overdoor light, for somebody to access.
yeah,
That light is gonna be just downward facing, right?
yes, yeah. Cause what I'm saying is that background lighting needs to be limited around the building.
I just want to comment. There's 3 businesses in a row. All 3 of us have 24-hour lighting outside around our buildings.
This
They're
has
out there.
sites pretty adequately lit.
A little, like a house light to get in the door so you don't break your neck.
But it would need to meet the necessary requirements, yeah.
Okay.
It'll probably be a solar light anyway.
For you. Okay.
Probably time for public comment, and then we'll have the applicant come back, and then we'll have the, Mr. Gerdad, answer additional questions too. Okay, it is 7 p.m. I'm first going to read off Tracy, is this the only correspondence we've received since the last? Okay. All right, this is from Tony Sequeira, dated Wednesday, June 17th. I would request your approval of Mr. Demanche's proposal to build a large chicken facility. It is definitely in keeping with the character of the town. This was historically a town with many working farms, and we now have dwindling agricultural interests, sadly. What he has proposed seems more efficient, more humane, and less of an impact on the surrounding environment than to force him to continue housing the animals in numerous sheds. All objections to the improvements seem to be nitpicking. The idea that an electric fence is harmful to the environment is a farce. The New Hampshire Department of Fish and Game not only suggests the same type of electric fence for those that have chickens or keep bees, they will actually loan them out, or at least used to. Objections like these are unfounded and needlessly obstructionist. I think it is an ideal American quality and an asset to have small independent businesses like Mr. Demanche's in our town. I believe the town should do everything possible to assist in such endeavors and not hinder them unnecessarily. Please move forward with this proposal. Sincerely, George Sequeira, 32 McCrillis Road. Okay. It's 7:02. I am going to open up the public comment. We'll begin with any members of the public who would like to speak in favor of the application. Okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak neither in favor nor in opposition to the application? Okay, and lastly, any members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, we have one member of the public. Please come to the table, state your name and address for the record, please.
Faith Levesque, Tremblay Drive. As mentioned, we've been reviewing this since April 8th, the site walk on the 15th, May 13th, May 27th, which he was a no-show because of the protest, but he was on the agenda, June 10th and July 8th. At the May 13th planning board meeting, he was asked to get a third-party review regarding agricultural best management practices. He has had 8 weeks to do that now. In terms of the letter you just read, a small business, 3,000 birds, doesn't seem very small to me. And there seems to be a focus on the chicken waste, not the humane free-ranging that the existing 1,600 chickens do not have. It is a logging sawmill business with absolutely no grass. That's all I need to say.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Yep.
Just a clarification, Mr. Chairman, is this public comment in general?
No, this is case-specific public
We
comment.
have a public
There
comment.
will be a
in
general public comment later in the, later in the meeting. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this application? Okay.
Hi there, Mary Crockett, Tremblay Drive. I have two questions. Whose property is the electric fence on, first of all? I'd like to know that. And also, are any chickens butchered on site? And if so, what happens to that waste? That's all I got.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, any other members of the public wishing to speak? Going once, going twice. It is 7:05. I am closing the public comment session. All right, I'll make a couple of clarifications before I invite the applicant back up. The applicant was not a no-show at the May 28th planning board meeting. They requested to continue until the next one, so we knew that they weren't going to be there. They weren't a no-show. The third-party review has been completed. This board does have the report from that, and the third-party consultant is actually here tonight to help answer questions and clarify things as well, so that has been done. This board has no jurisdiction or control over the treatment of birds. or any livestock whatsoever. Those are completely different entities that would handle that type of thing. We're here just for dealing with the building and the land use impacts, but not the humane treatment of any animals. And the rest of the other questions, I think the applicant could probably answer. So I'll invite you back up.
All right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'll be honest. I'll disagree with the no-show. The reason we didn't come is because I was out of the state. So Wade really wanted me to be here for continuity with the application. So I was already scheduled to be out of state on that day. So
It was good that you weren't at that meeting because it was a big one.
yes, as a direct abutter to that property, I paid close attention. So I'm definitely in the loop on that. And yes, certainly from the 8-week timeline, yes, there's the report, but we actually can't implement or take action. And, there's already been a cease and desist for the purpose of some sonotube foundations. So we're certainly not going to take any more action until we get through this process. So that's why nothing has changed on the site since. And then the 3,000 bird, not seeming small, that's a threshold established by the state of New Hampshire that says, there's no state inspector oversight if you're under 3,000 birds, and then there's a federal level as well. So we're actually under the state level, just like technically anybody in this town that has their own personal chicken flock. They're all under the 3,000 limit. So, and technically for the purpose of free range, the birds do. I've been there plenty. They certainly have free range of the area that they live now. The electric fence. Like I said, my company wasn't contracted to survey the property, so my understanding is that the electric fence was placed there really at the request of the abutter or with the abutter, Wade working with the abutter. I have not been involved in that process, so I can't really speak to it. It's not something that has been one of my tasks. And then no chickens are slaughtered on site. It's not the intent of this is a egg producing. In the past, birds have been shipped to or sold to facilities that then process them, but they're not done on site. And I think that addresses everything I jotted down. I know we can always get up again if you want Todd to come up.
All right, yeah. I think at this point we'll have the third-party consultant come up and maybe just give a brief overview of his review and answer questions that the board may have or clarify things.
How do you do? Yeah, so I guess what would you like me to talk about? Do you want me to just generally speak about the review itself, or?
Yeah, maybe if you could speak of, I don't know if the members of the public, saw the scope of the review. So if you could just go over kind of the things that you touched upon in your site visit, your report, and then after that, maybe, helping to explain and clarify some of the conditions that we have here. I assume that you got Blair's staff report and the conditions as well. Is that right?
I did.
Okay, great. And so maybe, you could help this board kind of understand some of those a little bit better and where they come from and the basis for them.
That sounds good. So for my participation, the scope was to approach the review of the operation through the lens of an NRCS conservation planning perspective, which is focused on addressing resource concerns such as anything that affects soil, water, air, plants, animals, things like that. And so you could think of a resource concern as inefficient use of water. We're wasting water in irrigation, so we may want to come up with ways to use less water. Or in a waste management scenario, a resource concern would be nutrients from that waste management process transported to surface waters or groundwater. And then what are some reasonable and suitable treatment mechanisms mitigation and treatment mechanisms to alleviate that. So the approach for this review was to use the NRCS lens as a way to evaluate the operation and make observations, not design or suggestions perhaps on how to do things, rather approach it from the perspective of how NRCS would evaluate it.
That's a quick
absolutely.
clarification. So the state statutes talk about the best management practices from the Department of Agriculture. Could you explain the relationship of the BMPs to the NRCS guidance?
Absolutely. So the New Hampshire BMPs for the Department of Agriculture and Markets and Food are actually based solely on NRCS principles, NRCS conservation planning principles. So in fact, the New Hampshire NRCS was contracted to help write those BMPs. The BMPs are based off of this conservation planning process. They're actually, I believe the BMP is a rather old document, while the NRCS conservation practices have been updated quite regularly, usually every 2 to 4 years. So we are following the most recent guidance, and that's actually all freely available on NRCS's Field Office Technical Guide website, where we can actually see the conservation planning process explained in their own words as well. But so the BMPs are based on NRCS practices for sure. With that said, the idea was to walk the property, understand the farm flow is the typical term, to understand how the management flows from one part of the farm to the next, where the animals are kept, where the animals eat, where they deposit their manure, where the manure is placed and stored, treated, and where the water goes. And so the overall assessment of the site was to evaluate the process, the facility, the operation, and then understand and ask questions on what the future plans are versus what's going on right now. And the resulting output from that is a series of suggestions to address the resource concerns that would likely come up in an NRCS site visit, namely related to almost typically always sediment and erosion control. For denuded areas, areas that don't have grass or anything like that, perhaps addressing that. Where manure is deposited and deposited by the animals in a free range environment, but also where it's stored and treated, where it's stored. And then what treatment mechanisms are in place? Is there composting going on? Is it, and how is it protected from leaching nutrients into the environment, either into the groundwater or surface water? And then ultimately a stormwater evaluation, where the water would transport nutrients either from a free range area, storage area, or a treatment area. So with that came just through the walk around. I guess I'll short circuit the whole report and just jump to the end. The evaluation showed also included a review of the most recent site plan revision that was submitted. So did a little bit of revising just to make sure that we were up to date on that. The composting pad was placed closer to where the manure and the manure embedded, the bedding and manure mix inside the building would be produced and then transported over to the compost area. And then the runoff from any runoff that was potentially generated from the composting operation was diverted through what's called a vegetated treatment area. And then that was to provide any treatment from any of the manured or nutrient-laden water from the runoff before it then continued to follow downslope. NRCS's process is pretty simple. If water touches manure, it's considered contaminated, it's considered nutrified, so it needs to be treated before it leaves the premises, before it continues on its way to wherever it goes, groundwater, surface waters. And so any water that touches an area where an animal is actively, or where an animal is active, where there's animal activity, or where there's any either compost or manure, or both, that touches water, any water that leaves that needs to be treated before it can leave the site premises, the system boundaries as they were. And so NRCS has a very clear process. So if water runs off of a barnyard, The water that runs through the barnyard needs to go through some sort of a treatment process, such as what you and I might call, and what the BMPs call, a buffer zone, some sort of a vegetated buffer zone. NRCS calls it either a vegetated treatment area or a filter strip. And the filter strip is it's basically just an unmowed grassy area, to really oversimplify it for this conversation. Vegetated treatment area is a little bit more specific in its design and intent, in that it generally treats a larger, higher concentration nutrient or higher flow of water. And it's designed to distribute water evenly across the entire area so that you get efficient distribution, no erosion, stuff like that. And nutrients are taken up by the plants in that planted area. A stipulation to all of this is that there isn't any animal activity in any of the treatment area, in any of so if the water runs off from the barnyard into a vegetated treatment area, animals are not allowed in the VTA. Because that area is supposed to be removing nutrients, not receiving additional nutrients on top of that was run off. So the conservation practices that NRCS has build in provisions to make sure that any of these operations that have the potential for water to touch where manure or nutrients are present, to be treated before it leaves the system boundaries. So the addition of the vegetated treatment area with a level spreader berm is an application of one of the NRCS practices, where the water runs into an area, fills up, and then is evenly distributed over that entire lip. You could think of the berm as like a nice, perfectly level table, and instead of the water flowing up and just going over in this one little area, it's actually divided over the entire surface area, so you have a more efficient use of assimilation of nutrients in the vegetated area downstream or downslope. The sizing of the composting pad, I guess I'll talk about some of this. The sizing of the composting pad and the amount of manure that was estimated to be produced combined with bedding was very similar to what I calculated. I used the NRCS's Agricultural Waste Management Manual, and that in Chapter 4 actually has pretty much the accepted values of how much manure each and every animal produces. It's based on a lot of different research and pretty much normalized by weight of animal. And so the numbers were pretty similar. So I would say, it's a pretty reasonable thing to do. When I worked at NRCS, we did exactly the same thing. We asked the producers to give us an assessment of how much bedding they have, and then add that to how many animals they have, and then estimate what they take out on an annual basis, or monthly, or however, and we annualize it, and then we always benchmark it against what that manual has to say. And in the times that they don't correspond, we either ask a lot of questions as to why you're producing a lot more than what NRCS manual says, or we go with the NRCS manual. So if you say you produce a lot less, the NRCS manual becomes the design spec, not the producer's suggestion. So by that standard, then the manure production and bedding, based on what we discussed and what I calculated, were very similar. The composting pad, based on the composting pad size appropriateness will be based on the composting plan. And the composting plan is something that would be based on an attended management plan. So how often does it get aerated or mixed? How often? How well is the moisture management maintained? So making sure that the right moisture content is maintained, and also doing a complete analysis of the nutrients going in. So bedding, manure, and anything else that might need to be included in it, so that an understanding of how fast the composting process actually happens. So that would be a much more detailed analysis. NRCS provides that through their planning process, free of charge. It just takes a little while. So I can't speak to that because I don't have a nutrient analysis of the manure and the bedding and everything like that. But if it's high in a lot of organic carbon and low in nitrogen, it generally takes a lot longer than if it's a well-balanced carbon-nitrogen ratio. So just something to consider. So the sizing, like Ian said, the sizing is somewhat fluid and would be dependent upon some of the additional analysis that would be required in order to determine that. But based on my experience working with other larger operations than this, I would say that composting pad's pretty adequate for the size. It's just my personal experience and opinion being injected in here, but I can't speak to it because I don't have the nutrient analysis. One of the ways that was suggested in the design, excuse me, the revised design was to include a tarp over the compost and stored manure. That's an accepted practice within the NRCS conservation process to eliminate or significantly reduce one of the resource concerns, which is nutrients transported to surface water, or groundwater for that matter. And then a concrete pad is also considered a mechanism for preventing another resource concern, nutrients transported to groundwater. While I was on site, we did talk about how many compost facilities are, instead of having the concrete pad installed level, it's actually sloped slightly to the back. And then the blocks or whatever the wall is on the back are sealed with an agriculturally appropriate seal, like an expanding grout or something like that. NRCS actually has specifications for exactly what type is suitable for those types of environments. And that can actually capture some of the leachate that comes from the composting process and the manure storage process, so that when you scoop it and you put the bottom back on the top, then the water continues to move down through the new pile that's been remixed and established. So that's one trick. And then so having a sloped pad, tarped top, significantly reduces any chance for treatment, or reduces any chances or amount of manured water to leave the site. So it would require a significantly smaller vegetated treatment area. Let's see. Oh, and the last piece, I think that was most important and probably comes out of the report, is that in order for NRCS to be able to say that they've adequately met their responsibility to treat manure that's water that's been contacted with manure, they have to have a defined area in which that water is touching and where all that water goes, so that it is validated or verified as treated. And to do that requires some sort of containment. And that containment can either be keeping them all completely under a roof so that no water ever touches the manure because all the water is outside of the building, or it's a fence of some sort. Just like any other agricultural operation, there's a fence around where the animals loaf, free range, whatever it is that they're doing, graze, and the fence defines the area where the manure would be deposited, and then a treatment plan such as grading the site or establishing vegetated buffers like treatment zones or VTAs or filter strips would be specifically placed downslope to make sure that the manured water from runoff is treated effectively before it leaves. I think that covered all of it.
Could you touch upon vector control?
Oh, vector control, right. So NRCS also has an integrated pest management built-in process as part of the conservation planning process. It's a way that's really dedicated to minimizing the impact on the environment by things like poisons, and instead trying to work on exclusion principles first. The more you exclude, the less pressure you have. So you use pest preventative feed storage and whatnot. And you might, if you have a building that is completely enclosed and all operations take place inside there, you could put rodent control. It's called, it's like the welded wire stuff, but it's really small holes. I can't remember the name of it right off the second, but basically metal fencing that's buried into the ground down to a certain depth so that you can exclude. So it's the exclusion principles. Screening vents, preventing access by digging, things like that. Metal containers instead of plastic to keep chewing animals out. things like that. And then also picking up any spilled feed, wastes, anything like that. Keeping a clean and tidy area is important. NRCS's integrated pest management plan doesn't really provide a good amount of fly control or eradication measures. It's more about trying to support the exclusion. So it's a pretty interesting planning process and has a little bit more leeway in terms of how they can support. So for instance, high greenhouses, they may provide funding so that you can put screening on your vents in your doors so that you don't allow pests and bugs, and so that you don't have to spray chemicals to keep the bugs off of your plants. I have seen the pest management plans that have supported some other animal operations to keep mice out, to do something similar. Instead of a fine mesh screening for bugs, it's more of a wire mesh that gets placed around in areas where animals might come in. But that would be, I think, something that working with the pest management specialist would be key. Cooperative Extension has pest management specialists as well that can be engaged equally, and so they can provide some suggestions. I would argue that the NRCS payment process for cost share on pest management isn't as robust as we might like to think it is, but they still provide plans and suggestions on how to eliminate, because exclusion might have a small or a moderate cost up front, but has huge savings down the road.
And in terms of flies, for example, how well does something like the vegetated treatment area and having covered compost bins deal with those potential issues? And the reason I ask is because we've had an abutter during public comment, essentially say that there was a big fly problem during the summer months that he attributed to the operations that were going on next door.
Yeah, fly control is a big concern. Certainly something that's across the nation right now with the screwworm. So we generally NRCS or any ag consultant is going to talk to you about manure management. And picking up everything and getting it to treatment as fast as possible, or at least into a storage area that can be confined. So tarping helps, scraping your barnyard helps, and that's so from an NRCS resource management perspective. The heavy use areas is what it's called, the barnyard, the roaming areas where animals might do heavy activity. Those areas are generally required to be scraped periodically. What that frequency has to do with how large it is and how much manure might be put down. For instance, a dairy operation might have a heavy use area that doesn't get scraped all winter long because it's frozen, but first thing in the spring it all gets scraped, and then it's a weekly operation after that, sometimes daily depending on the operation. So fly control would go to maintaining manure in a concentrated area where it's being managed, either stored and confined or treated. And the treatment process of composting does a really good job of driving fly control down, or fly presence down very quickly, properly managed.
And
Which means
how
lots of mixing.
does what ramifications does the containment of livestock or a flock do in terms of pest control, pest management, rather than completely free ranging?
Can you state that question again, please?
Yeah, so containing an entire flock, within a fenced area, what does that do in terms of pest control as well? Rats and other things getting into the area, because that's where I assume the spilled feed would be, and any potential other attractants.
Yeah, so it's the more animals you have in a given space, the more manure you have, the more feed, the more pest pressure that will bring. That's just physics, biology, I guess, more than anything. But it's a simple fact. So it just comes from a management perspective. So no operation is free of pest pressure. Those who have the least are the ones who spend the most amount of time cleaning regularly. Those who spend less time doing it have more pest pressure. I'm on the Facebook groups and I watch the New Hampshire chicken backyard farmers, and I read all the time about people who can't keep the rats out and can't keep the mice out of their facilities, their coops or their runs in their backyards. And everyone will say, put your feet up off the ground. Make sure that it's in a place where the animals can't get to it, where the rats can't get to it. Don't go spilling your feed. Keep it in a very in a very concentrated area. Chickens are great at picking up the food around their own feeders. So it's just a matter of access. So and there are ways to raise it up, make it chew proof, stuff like that. But it'll never be zero. That's the reality.
If you have chickens, you have rats.
Yeah, absolutely, right. It's very simple. I had rats. So, I have 30 chickens. I have the wire mesh that goes 18 inches into the ground, and they went 24.
It's funny, 'cause everything that you've said is everything I've done. And
Yeah. Yep, and I've got metal bins. I've got them raised up 15 inches off of the ground, so my little bantam rooster's standing on his tippy toes to eat out of that bin, but I don't have rats in my feed, so I'm okay with them doing that.
the VTA, how many feet buffer is that? Does that vary from size of the operation?
It varies based on the manured water that requires to be treated, the volume of the water and the concentration of the nutrients. So NRCS actually has a guidance document on their field office technical guide for New Hampshire specifically that provides sizing requirements, minimum sizing requirements, so that you can determine how big it should be. So for instance, a waste storage facility or a compost pad would likely require somewhere on the order of 1.5 to 1.8 times the surface area of the pad itself. So if it was 1,000 square feet of compost pad, it would require 1,800 square feet of VTA, vegetated treatment area.
Total.
Yeah, between 1,500 and 1,800. So just for reference, but they have a guidance document that it's very clearly written. It is based on soil type and vegetation as well, but generally at 1.5 to 1.8. I think it goes all the way up to 2.1 in like really risky situations like high slopes and stuff like that.
So there's plenty of property there for.
Yeah, it would just need to be planted out, and established and all that, and that's all provided for in those practice cost share payments, and they work with you to make sure you have that planting plan. But the exclusive piece there is that animals can't go in it, and you don't mow it, you don't use it for anything else. It's just used for treatment. It's a nice grassy area that just nobody touches, and all the poop goes there.
So, I feel like at this point, I would want to hear from, it may be a little iterative of a process with Todd, but and the applicant, but there was a couple of options put forward about how to handle this containment piece, and I guess I want to hear what the applicant is thinking and what they're planning to do, what the approach is going to be.
And just to be clear about those options, it was pasturing the chickens, which would take 7 acres to do, right?
That's right.
Given the flock size.
So that's not an option right now.
Containing the chickens entirely within the building all the time so that there was no runoff issues at all. Or fencing in a certain area that was outside of the vegetated treatment area that the chickens would stay in and not go out of.
And then have a vegetated treatment downslope of that,
of it to
so
treat.
that any runoff from that goes through that treatment.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
that's right.
Yeah, I just want to hear what does this conversation look like?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, I'm happy to stay up here and field any questions, or I can head on back and go back and forth. You tell me what you want me to do.
You can hang tight.
Okay, sounds good. I can talk all night. So.
Yeah. If you guys
I can talk to you.
We're okay sharing the table. Yes, yeah. Yeah, and I think what we've gathered from the report, and I know what we knew when we reached out to the USDA for the NSGS process, is that we're trying to obviously show some components for the purpose of the site plan, but ultimately if we're being asked to meet the NRCS requirements, there's going to be some fluidity. Hopefully things might get smaller, like the compost area, they might say, nope, you've actually now done your first clean out based on this bedding, you don't need something that big, and then it's reduced. And so that's where it's good that the current conditions of approval were broken, at least the draft ones are broken into precedent and subsequent, because there's certainly gonna be some operational elements that need to be fluid because that NRCS process takes time. And we don't control the timeline. We'll certainly help speed it along where we can, but we're, you know, in that process, and hopefully through that, we would hit some of those subsequent precedent items. Likely, you know, if the board was looking to have something on the plan that, because right now we haven't, obviously we don't want to provide the 7 acres of area. We don't want to encroach on additional land area. Also the chickens kind of, you know, they stay pretty close to their kind of coop now. Is we'd probably just, based on the site conditions, go with the kind of exclusion option, the fencing option. And so that could be a combination of, for example, the proposed detention basin that's been on the plan for a while. Really, that would just we'd kind of pull the fence line in there, but also have, and I think it's been mentioned before, there already is flexible electric fence interior to the site, and that would be used to then tie that back to the building or surround the building with that in that way. But there would be a degree of like permanent fencing adjacent to like a VTA or something like that. So, I mean, that would be essentially a modification of the fence line that we have on a plan now. We currently show it, again, following kind of that perimeter of the project, but it could very easily be brought in to protect that VTA. That's on the north side, the plan north, that would be the west side of the building, which is really the area we left open with the intent that that is kind of where the flock is. It's kind of where they like to roam now, and they will continue.
I think that's probably the, you know, biggest open question that the board has is the, you know, runoff of the free-ranging chickens out there. So if that fence could be pulled in and the vegetated treatment area, you know, excluded from the fenced-in area, that would give the board the reassurance that, you know, any off runoff would be treated properly, and that the chickens wouldn't be able to go into the treatment area, and just kind of those best practices that are there.
Yeah, and that would, like I said, that would just be like where we show fence now behind it. Sure. We would just be changing the fence line on the plan to show that it needs to come on the front side of it. And it wouldn't be an impenetrable fence, because the idea is this is kind of a large area that gently flows towards it, so that would be able to flow through the fence, but the chickens cannot. So it would just be a modification to the fence line that we currently have on the plan.
Eventually a permanent fence.
Oh yeah, so this, I think what we're, on the west side of the property, plan north, that's planned to be, I think you've already got 8-foot chain link, right? 6 or 8 foot
That's
chain
what we
link, that would be a
discussed
permanent.
25,000 square feet, if
Yeah,
I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of fence, 500 or 600 linear feet or whatever that equates to.
I think I need 275s because it's not working so good
It's
anymore.
the pink line, so it would just be
Right.
drawn in
Yeah.
here and here
Alright.
Yeah.
to get rid of the catch.
So I don't think we have a problem on the final plan just adjusting the existing fence. I don't think it changes our fence quantity overall on the site. It's just a modification to the alignment on the plan. I don't know if if that was the one thing you wanted me to address right now, if there was something else.
I mean, you know, I think this was the biggest outstanding issue. There's still, you know, I guess, what is the approach for protecting the flock from predators coming onto the site? Because it's just all open behind you. I mean, I'm sure it's a massive corridor. Well, yeah, but the backside of your property and then all the connecting parcels along there. So
Yeah,
I think we have the electric.
I have
fencing,
the electric
right?
fence where most of the chickens are. It's not completely closed in. I need a lot more electric fence to close it in, but I didn't want to do anything till my meeting. But it comes out, comes around, and comes all the way down here. that's where any predators we've seen have come from.
Hawks have been a bigger problem, right?
Well, lately I've been bumping it out with a couple of eagles, but they haven't landed yet. They see the turkeys and fly off. But we've got, well, 160 times 3, we got about 500 or so foot of electric fence, which has seemed to ward off a lot of predators, because they don't like to come down the open part of it, the other side of my property.
You want chain linking the whole thing then?
No, no.
But you're chain linking an area that will contain the chicken, so if it's a 6 or an 8 foot chain link fence,
Yeah,
it's gonna be a huge
Certainly,
That's not what I'm
deterrent.
hearing though. I'm hearing it's partially chain link, partially electric, and
So what we're trying to do is establish, there was concern that the chickens have moved towards the western abutter. So right now, the plan accounts for about 500 linear feet of permanent, I think I call it, I think it's 8 foot that Wade currently has the fence rolled up. That's on the western side, so plan north. The plan interior, so as you kind of work through the site, is to utilize electric because it can be kind of opened or moved, or if there's something, if Wade needs to get access to the back area with logs, he might move that electric fence and kind of be like, move them a little bit further away from where like his pettibone is moving. But there's, most of the time, if there's no activity with any sort of log piles or anything, they have the ability to go not just on the north side, but the south side and kind of be truly free range. It's all the same. There's additional vegetation planned there too.
So the electric fence, just so I don't know if you guys are thinking 2 strands of wire. I don't think that's what it is. You're talking the woven mesh.
It's a woven mesh.
Yeah, all right, just so that everybody
Starts off
understands.
this big down the bottom and slowly works up.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
I also just think even with that, I'm not sure we'd ever be able to guarantee that we can keep all predators out.
Well, I think it's more keeping the containment of the flock so that.
Oh yeah, and that's
So the
certainly
chain link and the electric fence are planned to be contiguous and
fully connected.
fully
Yeah,
connected and enclosed,
yeah.
including the.
Make sure the electric fence doesn't touch the metal fence in some
Sure.
way, but
Right.
yes, that's the intent.
So there's not gonna be like a section of it that's totally open that the chickens could then go out of or something like that and, so that, I think the concern is that, or that the thing that we're trying to verify is that the flock would be contained completely so that any of the manured, heavy use area, the runoff from that would go to the vegetative management area in that basin.
Sure.
I think that's the main concern.
Yeah, I think if we can show if you want us to adjust that fence line, I can use a different line type if you'd like to show electric fence versus a chain link fence line, or again, that would be something that'll be memorialized on the plan, but the electric fence is like a flexible item, again, like if he needs to get access to the barn, he might
Yeah.
kind of move him and keep him away if he's doing something on the edge of the barn to kind of keep them from bothering him, so.
That way you keep the grass growing.
Yeah,
Shift them over here, you shift them over there, cause they'll tear it up. It'll light you up too, I know that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I made the mistake and put my knee on the ground.
I've been electrocuted more times than I want to admit.
So yeah, I think that if we just, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that the fence line could be adjusted and address that, what seems like the most open. Maybe something that hasn't been addressed, but it was brought up in the report, that's a pretty easy to modify the fence line that we already have or add to it and clarify what's electric, what's chain link, so again, chain link being the permanent fence line.
Blair did that.
Yeah, I guess the question would be then, does the board want to see that first, or is a condition, is that something that can be conditioned?
I think that could be a condition precedent, see that on the plan before it's signed.
we want to address the compost storage bins in regards to proximity to the boundary line.
It's a 5-degree rotation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, 5-degree
we can do
rotation
a,
or waiver.
we can do a straw poll. How is the board feeling about that waiver? Or would the board prefer it to be, slid upwards or rotated out the 5 degrees to get it out of that boundary?
I'm indifferent, it doesn't matter.
Hmm?
Doesn't matter to me. So I'm just comfortable.
Just get it out of the boundary.
I think approving the waiver is taking the interpretation that pad is the same thing as what that storage area, parking area was talking about.
Right, it's not a variance for the setback ordinance, it's an interpretation of what that concrete pad would be.
Yeah.
And if rotating it or sliding it wouldn't impact the, overall site functionality, at least to me, I think that it would be better to do it that way.
And to your point,
than
it
in
may
a waiver.
change, the size may change, so.
That was my question. What if they tell me, hey, you gotta make this a little bigger?
Or you need it to be X feet away from the barn.
Yeah, do I have to come back in and go through the whole?
Technically, it would trigger it.
Well, I think if it had to go into the setback, then you'd have to go get a variance from the zoning board for that setback, because then we would have already decided on the site plan, so it could be kind of a different process there.
All right, I was just trying to figure out why.
Yeah.
I got the worst luck.
So it sounds like the board probably would prefer if it, were rotated
Yeah,
out.
so that's fine. I think that's fine. I guess.
Can't he tell you if it's big enough?
Well,
I mean,
we
it-
said it's
So
a
I
fluid
was-
process.
I was not contracted to do design. The answer to your question is yes.
I was gonna say, there's 320 by
Yes,
20
I can
foot
tell
bins,
you if
it's
it's
more
big
than
enough,
enough.
but I need to do more, but
It looks
So,
like more than enough to me.
for instance, I did design a compost pad that was for windrows, so not as deep and stored as tall, but it's an 80,000 bird operation, and it was a 60 by 120 pad
60 by 100, for how many birds?
for 80,000.
So we're
At
I was
15th
gonna
of that.
do
about half of that.
That's 80,000 meat birds, so they're only on site for 6 to 8
20,
weeks.
25th of that, which is,
Okay.
yeah, that's more than,
But if the board would just, from a cleaner interpretation perspective or something, I think we're okay with, I guess, just rotating and just revoke the waiver request, so don't take action, or don't expect the board to take action on that fourth one.
That's
what conditions are we looking at then?
By 120, 'cause
Condition for pest control.
cheaper to build too.
Yeah. Condition for pest control.
Yeah, I think there is one on there.
That'll come up under the NHDS,
I think there was a
right?
subsequent item, pest management plan.
Yeah.
Again, that's an NRCS item.
Yeah, that's a condition subsequent here on the very last one on this page, is to develop an integrated pest management plan with the NRCS.
Did you have a question?
Well, I was part of
Can
the
I
pest
add to
control.
that? Because
Sure.
I think that the cooperative extension, New Hampshire Cooperative Extension might be able to offer some assistance on developing an IPM plan as well. So it might be worth it. I mean, they work in hand with NRCS. So if NRCS is hard to get a hold of, I might suggest you talk to Cooperative Extension about that.
So that one could be potentially satisfied by either of those entities, or working with either of those entities to prepare something.
Yeah,
So we can change that to and/or New
Right.
Hampshire Cooperative Extension.
And then I just while we got tied up here, does it make sense to have that second to last precedent condition? Because again, I think it relies somewhat on the NRCS process, because they're the ones that have to confirm the treatment train. If that makes sense to move to subsequent, because that's where all the other NRCS ones
Yeah, and I
are, that's
think-
the only thing I just noted.
I think now that we have assurance that the flock will be contained and that that treatment area is gonna be outside of it too, that, you know, that however that's sized will be appropriate through the,
So we'll still do it,
Process.
but do it as part of the NRCS for the subsequent.
yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I don't know if anybody else has opinions, but it seems to make sense to me. Blair, do you have any more questions for Todd or the applicants?
No, you guys have gotten through it.
Does the board have any more questions for Todd or the applicant at this point?
I have one comment for Todd. Hardware cloth.
Hardware cloth, thank you. I knew the cloth was in there somewhere, but I just could not put the words together, thank you. And why they call it hardware cloth still escapes me, I don't understand. Because it hurts so bad when you try to cut it.
Okay, so discussion for the board right now, is there any more discussion on the conditions that we have that Blair put together or the findings of fact? I do have one comment on the findings of fact, they are substantial here. But the very last bullet there, it's boilerplate language. You know, the planning board finds that the approved plans meet the development controls set forth in the town's site plan review regulations and zoning ordinance and meet the intent of the master plan. I think for this, you know, the RSAs allow this use because of how our ordinances are written, but I would disagree that it meets the intent of the master plan, so I would strike that part of that last finding of fact. The approved plans do meet the development controls, the site plan review regulations, and the zoning ordinance at this point. But it's my opinion that they don't meet the master plan's objectives. Blair, is there anything else that you'd like to
No,
bring up or go over? Do we have to read out all of these findings of fact?
the findings, no, we don't, but the
Conditions probably.
the conditions, we just wanna make sure that we're all on the same page here.
I had a question on number 14, addressing the solid waste section. I don't really understand how it doesn't apply here. I mean, it's an important part of the business, so I think we should make sure for everyone's sake. Cause it just says like the transfer or other use of solid waste is,
But we're not solid waste. I think there was question if the, I think, I don't know if I'm saying it right, the petriscable material, which is food waste.
It's organic.
Yeah, it's basically
It's-
organic waste.
Which is what the compost is, I mean.
I would also argue that if it's determined that this, for some reason, needs a variance, then every farm in this town would need relief from that. Or any agricultural operation in this town would, no matter the size. So,
I think it's the business side of it, you know, turning it into compost for sale.
right.
I don't see that mentioned though, like that it's
Well, I think
a mention of the
having
business.
a dog go to the bathroom on your backyard would not be considered a solid waste, you know,
No, but-
operation. But I think, you know, doing it at scale would be,
I think we'd be hard pressed to find that somebody hasn't sold chicken manure waste from, I mean, those varying size operations in town. And we wouldn't be able to prove it, but I can assume there's still farms in this town and not every farm holds on to all of their compost or manure. It gets trucked off site in some
Manure and
fashion.
compost are two different things.
Yeah,
chicken waste. I think we can verify that.
That's the resource management system that NRCS employs. It talks about manure being produced, transferred, stored, treated, and then utilized, and it's no longer considered manure after it's been treated. It's now a highly nutrified product. It's an organic product. It's not considered manure.
It wouldn't be much different than.
I don't know if compost falls into, I'm by no means trying to define what solid waste is defined as, but yeah, compost is not considered manure, so.
So like people who sell bags of composted horse manure or something like that, it's not much
Those are
different.
two different things, right? One is manure, one is compost.
You have a hard time selling a bag of
Composted horse manure.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I looked into the whole composting thing, that is what I was trying to figure out is, you know, at the end of the process, is it no longer manure? And everything I studied and looked up said, no, it's kind of, for lack of a better word, deactivated once it's been through the treatment process.
What's that timeline?
6 to 10 weeks.
That sounds right, yeah.
So the end result is a usable product. It's not solid waste, it's not refuse, it's not trash, it's not garbage, and it's not putrescible material, right? Because it's organic compost.
It's earth. It's just nice clean dirt with worms in it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, my interpretation reading that is that this wouldn't fall under that. Okay, should I read off these conditions just to make sure we're all on the same page then? Okay, conditions precedent for this would be to submit final plan copies with professional seals and signatures. And I think we're going to be satisfied just having Ian stamp on those plans. Pay all application and consultant fees, which I believe has been done. Add total disturbed area to the plan for phase 1 limit of work. Amend plan to show the compost storage bins more than 100 feet from the boundary line. Add to the plan the waivers received for plan preparation or survey under local approvals. Add to the plan the reseeding mix / conservation mix around the entire site or disturbed area. Add to,
Just a note to that effect, I assume, just said add to plan, I assume just a note on the plan, or, okay.
yeah, I think that will suffice. Add to the plan a note that no additional lighting is to be installed with the new structures. Is that the case?
I mean, it was just to try to avoid them having to submit a lighting plan, because up until, you know, when I submitted this in, I didn't know what they were doing. I was pretty sure they weren't doing anything, so that's why I put that in there.
I think if the board would like, it's really hard to draw the photometrics for like a single house entry
Yeah,
door,
it seems
but
silly.
if we need to show a box and call out, entry door light, again, this is like something you would put next to your,
For the new structure.
for the new structure, and it would go.
Fine.
If we need to call it out on the plan for the purpose of the board, cause it's realistic to assume he's gonna have, you know,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
light, if
single
he
light.
needs, a single light at the door, he needs to go check on the flock,
No
so,
different than the light that's over your door.
Yeah.
so we
60
can,
watt,
if the
whatever.
board would like, that can just be I can call out a location that we expect it to be.
Okay.
So add a plan note, showing, you know, entrance light.
Okay.
Something
That's
like
fine.
that.
Yep. Applicant shall obtain a driveway permit from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation for the change of use or written confirmation from NHDOT that a permit is not required. Then we struck the next one about the AOT permit because there is a note on the plan to that effect. The next one we moved down. So then the last one for conditions precedent would be confirm the down gradient flow direction and treatment area boundary spot elevations or a limited drainage exhibit.
Yeah, I think I can review this, I think we've got a decent amount of detail on our C 3.1 sheet. I can add more spot grades and more flow arrows if that's the intent. We have some on there.
Yeah.
We kind of, like I focused on spot grades, the spot grades that we showed for that pad highlighted what Todd mentioned, kind of the inverted slope of it. But there's some other areas on the site, if the board would like us to just kind of marry that across the site, we can add spot elevations, we have them, it's just we didn't turn them all on to muddy the plan, but they will fit,
Okay.
so we have those. So that's fine just to leave that as is.
Then going on to conditions subsequent, to be completed within how many months of approval?
I'm sorry.
Are we talking 18 months of approval? Is that
We haven't had
reasonable?
any indication, right?
I mean, without knowing how long NRCS.
Nothing locked in, I was told, we're the government, we move slow. You're looking at 12 to 18 months.
Okay. So you're comfortable with 18 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's always, just so you know, there's always, if for some reason we get to 18 months, but we can show like we're almost there, we'll just set a calendar reminder and come back and update the board and say,
Sure.
here's where we've gotten to with them.
Yeah.
And hopefully at that point it's,
Bring Sarah with us.
I think
Yeah,
the
if we
board
need to.
understands how slow that process could potentially move, but.
we hope it
need
doesn't come to
put-
that, but there is an opportunity, you can come back to the board at the end of that and say,
Yeah.
here's where we're at, here's how we kind of got here at this pace. So that's an option, even though there's a time limit here, that would just be something that could be adjusted in the
Okay.
future.
So conditions subsequent to be completed within 18 months of approval are confirm the treatment train, level spreader, organic filter berms, detention basin, conservation seating is sized and stabilized to treat barnyard and range runoff before discharge, according to the NRCS. Hold the Lang flock below 3,000 birds consistent with the documented intent of 2,800 birds. Demonstrate that the covered 30-foot by 75-foot pad and bin volume are sized for the documented manure and winter bedding accumulation per NRCS and keep the bins covered. Confirm at final siting that the compost manure storage holds a 75-foot wet soils buffer. Address animal containment and range runoff management to NRCS standards through the conservation plan by either fully containing the flock within a defined area with a complete perimeter fence, and capturing and treating the area's runoff, or managing the ranged area under a verified NRCS prescribed grazing plan. But in all cases, the birds must be excluded from the detention basin, level spreader, filter beams, and down gradient wet soils area. Operate under a
I presume we're removing the second option, because we're going with the first option, correct?
Yeah, that seems to be the,
We could remove the second one, because I
Okay.
think we know the grazing
yep.
wouldn't be in line with the.
Yeah, the pasteurized grazing plan's not in the mix.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. So then,
hold on, I just, as part of the plan, though, this is a condition subsequent, I think a condition precedent has to sort of pull from this a little bit, because we wanna see plans.
That's a good point, we should add the
Yeah.
fence line change as a precedent.
Yeah.
okay, so adding to the conditions precedent that the final plans will show a contained area within which the flock will be a defined area within which the flock would be contained, and a capture and treatment area that is down gradient and outside of that containment area.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have on here to change the permanent fence line and add electric fence line on the plan.
Okay.
So that precedent one then just is gone, correct? That
The subsequent one?
the subsequent one is just gone because we moved it, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Okay. Operate under, back to the condition subsequent, operate under a written nutrient, manure, and compost management plan developed with NRCS field office and kept on site. Then develop an integrated pest management plan with either NRCS or the UNH cooperative extension, rodent-proof feed storage, metal bins and silos, and rodent-resistant feeders, prompt cleanup of feed spills, an enclosed perimeter. A small mesh electric fence can serve both bird containment and pest exclusion, and mechanical traps rather than poisons, with any rodenticide a last resort and tamper-resistant stations only. tie fly control to regular turning, mixing, and moisture management of the compost, and orient building ventilation away from the on-site apartment and nearest abutting residences. Next, the compost bin pad location, footprint, containment. Nope, I don't think that one's
Struck.
struck. Okay.
That'll be addressed in the precedent one.
Yeah. Applicant shall submit a site plan review application for any expansion or addition to the agricultural operations. An applicant shall meet all the conditions of the NHDOT driveway permit number 06-351-372 received from the 2021 site plan approval that have not been met to date.
So
Is
again,
that
this would be struck because this
yeah.
was submitted
Sure.
before Ian responded to me,
Oh, okay.
so,
So that one's gone.
yes.
All right, and that's it for the conditions subsequent.
Alright, so we have we're at 4.
Yes.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the board, clarifications that need to be made before we go to a vote?
Just one question, more so this might be just like Blair. We want the conditions of approval, obviously is probably lengthier than the standard condition of approval. Do we want these listed on the final plan cover sheet? As some municipalities like when you just list the conditions of approval.
I think that'd be a good
I know it
idea.
gets recorded, but
Well, it's a site plan, it doesn't get recorded.
it would be on file here anyway.
Yes, it would be on
Yeah,
file
okay.
here.
Yeah.
The notice of decision's gonna have all of it.
Okay, we'll just add it just so that there's no question. We'll type it. Okay.
Pull it from the notice of decision.
Yes, yeah, ultimately I'll take
When we
that.
finally pull it together, because I'm gonna need some help with a couple of these, but, yeah. Joe and I will work through it.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so at this point, I am looking for a motion from the board on this application.
I move that the application put forth by Precision Lumber, case number 26-007 SPR, be approved with the conditions precedent and conditions subsequent as previously read and amended.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All right, that passes. All right, thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Todd.
Thanks for sending that.
Okay. Where did I put my agenda? Okay, next on the agenda for tonight is other business. I don't think we have any, do we, Blair?
I don't.
There's a few things under other, you wanted me to add the moratorium to your packet, and then there was a couple of letters from Jim Hadley.
Yeah, okay, well, I think we're gonna go into public comment after this one, and I think Mr. Hadley is here. And we'll probably talk about the things that he sent us as well. And I think during the select board, the board member updates, we'll probably talk about the moratorium as well. So at that point, I think we don't have any specific other business right now. So we'll move on to public comment. It is 8:09 PM. This is general public comment. The board can't respond to comments made about specific properties, projects, or applications. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak? Yep, please approach the table, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Deborah Nelson, and my question is, where is the board on, I did see that a subcommittee has been or is being convened to look at ordinances to protect our resources, having reasonable ordinances that are not gonna, if somebody wants a business approved, they have to meet certain criteria so that the town doesn't have to go through this every single time. So where are we with that?
Yeah, so this board established a subcommittee to look at zoning regulations zoning ordinances and various regulations that could be updated while the moratorium is in effect. So last Wednesday, this board held a public hearing for the temporary moratorium. It passed unanimously with the members who were present, and it's now been sent to the town as a warrant. And the select board met on Monday, and they thought they had set a date of September 8th for that to happen, but they didn't realize that the RSAs don't allow a special town meeting to occur during a biennial election, so they need to find a different date for it. So they're still working through that process. As far as being protected, the town the town was protected from the moment that that moratorium was legally noticed. So the select board in their meeting also said that when the ordinance passed, this board on July 1st and had its public hearing, that's when the 120-day clock by which you have to hold that special town meeting started. But it actually was on June 15th when the legal notice happened, which takes the 120-day window to October 13th, I believe is the day. So the town has between essentially now and October 13th to hold a special town meeting to pass that temporary moratorium. When that temporary moratorium assumedly gets passed, that's when the 12-month clock starts for that moratorium. In that interim is when the subcommittee in particular, is going to be looking at, coming up with ordinance updates and regulation updates to help control any potential, not just specific to data centers, but anything that would kind of use large amounts of groundwater, large amounts of electricity, generate noise, vibrations. They're not, I don't think, being myopic about just doing it for data centers. They're doing it a little more broadly so that, who knows what the next data center type development that is hot right now could come through. So they're, I think, taking it with a view that's a little broader than that, so that we can maybe put some guardrails and protections in place.
Right, and I'm thinking, I'm sure you are too, more broadly than just a data center. Could be,
sure,
another proposal of a chicken farm for 80,000 chickens or something. Just it would be good to the extent we can get it right with the ordinances that do that balance between protecting our resources and being friendly to businesses that are willing to, mitigate whatever harm could happen.
And I think this board is likely going to take up the issue of updating our zoning ordinances to meet the intent of the master plan about having agricultural uses in the commercial industrial district. So I think that is on the board's to-do list during zoning season later this fall. So the board has heard the public and is going to likely put that to the town for a vote to see what the legislative body thinks about that. Mr. Arsenault here is chairing the zoning ordinance and regulation update committee as well. So during these meetings, he'll be, during our board member updates, he'll be feeding that information about what's happening at those meetings back to this board as well. I believe they're meeting every 2 weeks right now to keep a good cadence going. So I expect, that there will be some good movement on that. And, with him being kind of the liaison between the subcommittee and this board can help discuss maybe some of the things that they're struggling with or having trouble with in terms of zoning ordinances. And we have, we are a member of the New Hampshire Municipal Association. They're a resource that we can use as well if we get kind of stuck in a rut or need some advice. So there are.
And other towns have done.
Sure, yeah, there are other, not just in this state, but other states that have dealt with some of this stuff too, about water withdrawals and electricity usage that we can draw from as well. And I think that subcommittee is definitely planning to be as thorough as possible in what they discuss and go over.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. I have a procedural question.
Sure.
Does this board, you passed the conditional approval. If something comes up that wasn't addressed and answered that ought to be a condition, do you have the authority to add another condition if it's surfaced before all final documents are signed? Or is it done, like nothing else can be added to the conditions at this point? I'll talk generally because I know we can't go back to any specific project, but.
Blair, did we have, do all of our cases get the kind of general conditions where if inefficiencies, are identified during site development that, I'm failing to,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, like an errors omissions kind of thing, or,
sure.
I don't know the answer to that. I wouldn't wanna jump in on that one. You know. Yeah.
I guess what I would say from a general answer is that this board is very limited in what type of conditions and restrictions can be put on any type of agricultural use. And it is a tough thing for the board to grapple with in general. And this board, you know, does the best it can with trying to plan and foresee things and does as much as we can to try to get as much information as we can to make an informed decision on a case that is within our ordinances, site plan review regulations, et cetera.
Right, and I'll phrase this generally in keeping with your, we can't go back to specific projects, but ongoing monitoring and also in ordinances and responsibilities and authority of towns. You know, what were the plans for ongoing monitoring of certain projects to make sure that after all is said and done, a business is in place, who's going to, you know, make sure that the standards are held that were required of them. But, you know, so we don't have to find out a year from now that they weren't and there's pollution or whatever. So just something to consider.
So that's an enforcement issue that would be, you know, if there was, for example, a project that ended up having a lot of odor, you know,
Yes.
unexpected odor.
Yes.
An abutter could complain and then the code enforcement officer might go check it out. And, you know, any application, you know, site plan that gets approved is on file here at the town. So the code enforcement officer is able to see what was supposed to happen during that, you know, development or site plan application and can take action based on that.
Okay,
So
great.
it's kind of beyond this board at that point. But that's how that would work. So it's up to, you know, if there is a nuisance in some type of development later on, then that's what a, you know, a complaint to the town is for. It gets, you know, hopefully investigated, and then the code enforcement officer makes a decision whether or not there's a violation. And then if there is, figures out what the best path forward is to either fix it or.
So it would not be proactive like once a year somebody monitors, it would only be in response to a complaint. I mean, I know that's
Yeah,
what the
typically.
agricultural department does, they can't go in unless somebody complains, but I'm just curious how that would work.
Yeah, I mean, it of course depends on the development, and how that's, you know, there was, so the prior USA Springs, there was, so it wasn't this board that did it, but the, DES, Wetlands Bureau, as part of their, approval, they required that there be a certain amount of that property set aside for habitat, and that habitat would be managed and monitored yearly by a qualified professional. So it is a thing that can be done when it's a thing that's allowed by the RSAs or by one of the state agencies. But on a local level, this board is a little more restricted in what type of, you know, requirements, ongoing requirements can be put on a development or application if they aren't specifically set out in an RSA or something like that.
Does the zoning board have that authority?
No, the zoning board only hears appeals for variances and special exceptions. So if somebody wants to put a shed within 20 feet of their, you know, property line, they'd have to go to the zoning board to get, you know, a variance for something like that. The zoning board doesn't make policy or regulation. It's this board that comes up with the zoning ordinances, but the zoning board of appeals is the board that gives relief to landowners for whatever the ordinances, you know, state.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Other public comment? Or if there's any other member of the board want to make any other comments about that? I know I just kind of took that whole thing, but I'm feeling talkative, I guess.
No, solid.
Okay.
Solid.
Yep.
Have your hand out.
Thank you.
Jim Hadley, Northwood. I've been before the board a couple times recently regarding the former USA Springs site, and I have provided the board and the subcommittee with a couple handouts, and I dropped another one off today. I don't know if you've seen it, if it's in your package or not, but one of the handouts on July 1st was a comment that talks about local zoning and ordinances for new data centers. And it says, communities can successfully restrict or ban data centers locally by pushing for strict ordinances. This includes demanding that facilities be kept away from residential areas. So I'm not going to get into detail, but I wanted to provide you with a map of the property, the former USA Springs property, and the closeness of the residential area at Lincoln Circle. Just to, that's something for the subcommittee to look into, maybe saying that data centers shall not abut residential properties as a possible ordinance or restriction within site plan regulations or within a ordinance. So, I think there's options that the board and the subcommittee can look into, but I think this one is pretty straightforward because of the adverse impacts that if you do research about data centers in Northern Virginia, I guess that's the capital of the data centers in the world right now, and the residents that have complained about the noise is one of the worst things that is happening with data centers. So I want to thank you for your service for the town of Nottingham. Thank you.
Okay, any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none. It's 8:23. I am ending the general public comment session now. Okay, moving on to the select board rep's not here. Committee, staff, and board member updates. I'll start with my right. Any updates for us, Carrie?
Sure, yes. Just real quick, UNH Cooperative Extension and the Workforce Housing Coalition held a training last month. It was a collaboration between area towns about zoning and kind of looking at it from the developer's perspective. They gave us a set of zoning regulations and a few different types of houses and said, here you go plot out setbacks, go plot out how the heck you can build a house on this. And I gotta tell you, it was super crazy hard. So I just found it really enlightening, and I know they've had that training a couple times. I would highly recommend it. If it comes back up again, I'll let you know.
That was through the cooperative extension?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
they did a great job.
Yeah, please do let us know when.
I've taken it as well. It was Ivy's.
Yeah, it was Ivy.
Oh, okay.
And it's phenomenal. Because it's done from the perspective of the builder, it lets you see how they view it, and I hate to say it, I don't want to be a dead horse with this, but like how restrictive zoning can really be, and when you consider parking requirements, setbacks, and the cost of construction. So you might be saying, well, we let them build up to 3 units, but if the minimum area size, the frontage size, and stuff, and the cost of construction, it might not make the numbers work for what they can rent it for, what they could sell condos for, or something like that. It really is a very eye-opening process.
It really makes you look at it and say, well, that's why Chinburg's building $860,000 raised ranches, because that's what you have to build in order to make the numbers work, which I had known from doing it, but to sit there and sit at a table with other people from Hampton and Chester, and take a look at the numbers, they were kind of really in awe. I was like, yeah, that's what it looks like, so it was very good. That's all I have.
Can I get $860 for my raised ranch? I just sold it 4 years ago.
It's brand new maybe, and Chinburg built it, I don't know.
Any updates, Mr. Lichtenberg?
Not for me, no.
Okay. I guess I went over my main update, which was the moratorium that was passed last Wednesday. Again, the select board thought they had set a date, but I pointed out the RSA that said that you can't do it during the biennial election. Wasn't really clear if that applied, but it turns out it did. So they've got to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out when that special election is going to happen, which, you know, it's a shame because it would have saved a good amount of money to be able to hold it on September 8th. And I was hoping that that would work, but nope. So still TBD on when that moratorium vote is going to happen, but I'm sure the select board's trying to figure that out as quickly as possible because there's, you know, other noticing timelines that they have to abide by, and the supervisors of the checklist have another timeline. That there are a lot of moving parts there, but they're on it. So I'm confident they'll be able to make it happen in the time we have to make it happen. I guess the only other small update I've got is that the town does now own the parcel parcels behind us, the 114-ish acres. And at some point we'll be, getting a group of people together to figure out exactly what the town wants to do with it. We've had some of the Conservation Commission members had a walk with Caitlin Deo from CELT, who is, CELT is planned to be the conservation easement holder for that property, just to check it out and see what it's like. And on that walk, we actually found a little veery nest in the brush, which was kind of crazy looking. I didn't expect it there. Little blue eggs, just like robins. So that's my update.
This is my first update. So yeah, I'm chairing the zoning regulation and update subcommittee. I'm just gonna say for people watching that the next meeting is July 21st. All are welcome. We are inspired by what happened with the data centers, but I think that helps us just to see what the town values and how we can update the ordinances accordingly. But once the summer kind of winds down, we're gonna be meeting first and third Wednesdays right now because everyone's schedule is a little weird. We keep adjusting it. So first and third Wednesdays normally. Next meeting is July 21st, and we're posting the dates wherever those get posted, like online and so on. That's it.
Thank you.
So, kind of feeding off of yours, is the subcommittee focused entirely on regulations related to the moratorium and like the adjacent things, or is this a subcommittee of like zoning amendments and site plan review, subdivision changes? Or is that gonna stay, or is everything else gonna stay here, but they're gonna take the lead on that sort of
I think that's the chunk that the subcommittee is taking, is that during the moratorium, they'll probably start with, data center a little wider than that and work on zoning ordinance updates first, since that's gonna kind of hit us before, we can do reg updates pretty much any time with a public hearing. So I think the real kind of squeeze is going to be ordinances first, and then regulations peppered in there as well, because the moratorium, depending on when it passes, will last well past the next town meeting in March, and so that would also give that committee time to work on extra regulations.
but not zoning.
But not zoning, right? So I think, when the committee first met, my guidance to them was to tackle ordinances first, because they, zoning season comes quickly.
Yeah.
And the process can take a little while, and we've got one shot at getting the ordinances there in time for the, town meeting in March, whereas our regs can be updated, as long as there's a public hearing by this body.
Well, to that end, I'm pleased to announce that SRPC submitted 4 grant applications to PREPA for applications for grants, and this one is the one that they chose.
Nice.
So
excellent.
2 for 2 with PREPA grants.
That's incredible.
As an organization, we were hoping to get at least 2 of the 4, but they do have other communities, obviously, outside of SRPC, including Maine.
Yeah. Right.
So last year we did quite well. This year not as well. But this group, my grant got it. So what we're planning to do with that is Right, zoning and regulation changes. They'll fall in two buckets. One is stormwater regulations. And looking at that, that's mostly site plan subdivision. It really doesn't have too much to do with zoning, if anything at all, if I can think of it. The other piece was kind of taking what we have already looked at or started to look at and actually doing it, which is the boundary line setbacks, the minimum buildable area, and then resource setbacks. So maybe increasing some, shrinking others, and working towards that balance of housing growth, but also protection of the things that make this community wonderful. So that's what the plan is. I think you put together a table that showed our regulations, our setbacks compared to some other communities. So we've already got starting points and places to work off of. I think that one's gonna be almost entirely zoning. It's gonna move quickly because of the fact that once zoning season hits, it goes fast. Zoning season basically starts with the next thing that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, so that PREPA grant is we did get a word of that, and SRPC will get going on it. But first, we're gonna get through all the bureaucratic stuff of contract and everything. We'll get going in earnest probably in October.
I'll say you put together a very strong application, and I'm very pleased that this town was awarded another PREPA grant.
Yeah,
You did a good job putting that together.
thanks, I appreciate it. I mean, it helped that they gave us the grant dollars to do the natural resources chapter, and we said that what we want to do is implement some of the recommendations that we're already toying with and have been talked about. So it's sort of like one feeding off of the other, and both of them being funded by them. And Drew was a huge help in helping me shape that out because we didn't have much time. So yeah, which brings me to my next point of discussion is the annual joint meeting that we always do.
Yep.
With the other regulatory boards, Conservation Commission, ZBA. We typically invite the select board, and there has been little discussions about possibly asking school board or maybe somebody from the school committee or school staff. When we talk about development, particularly with housing, it comes with new children could come into the school system. So
You can say it, Blair, NIMBYism, you can say it.
Potentially asking them whether they come. Everybody's got their hands full. The hope is that they will. We've usually had pretty good turnout. Conservation comes pretty well, at least a couple people from Board of Appeals. And in the past, another select board member usually comes. So we do get some people to come. Dale usually attends. Might be great if we could get a couple more staff, particularly like road agent or something like that. Knowing how fast zoning season comes upon us, I have already started to draft an agenda for that.
That's gonna be the second meeting in August, is that right?
That's right, yeah, it's the second
Business,
meeting.
yeah,
It
okay.
becomes a business meeting or a working meeting. There's no hearings, there's no nothing from the public can come and witness. If the chair wants to let them participate, they can participate, but it's not a typical meeting with an agenda like what you would see from Tracy. So I had come up with a few ideas of things that I think would be good for us to talk about, just to sort of kind of get the ball rolling. Obviously, we hope that other people, people that attend the meeting will have things that they want to talk about as well. It's not, we don't want it to be this board talking at people, but I did put a few things together to get us started, and I was going to circulate it for 8/26/26. Potential zoning amendments funded through the PREPA grant. Talk about that. Proposed subdivision and site plan review changes. We had started a conversation a few meetings ago, so we could talk about some of the ones that sort of bubbled up to the top that we all thought were good ones to approach. We could use this as an opportunity to do a follow-up on, or maybe even a summary of Dale's meeting that he had a few months ago, talking about processes and the communications. I haven't really heard too much about that since then, but maybe do a quick summary and then schedule another meeting. It could be as simple as that. Status of the master plan chapter updates and presentations to the planning board for adoption. Hopefully I have a few more answers for people at that point, by the time that comes around. So those were just some of the ideas to sort of get us going, but I don't want that to be the whole thing, because we do want to hear from everybody else. It's actually an opportunity for us to hear from them about things that they're seeing on their end that we need to start thinking about for regulatory changes or policy procedure changes.
Do you typically circulate that agenda to the other chairs and have them add to it? How does that work?
This is the first time I've taken a proactive stance. Usually,
Okay.
Ed and Dirk would do it, but Drew and I have been talking a lot, and so this one kind of popped on my head, and I just went after it last week. So I think that's a great idea. I could circulate it to them, say, look, here's the draft. What would you like to add to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely do that.
Sounds reasonable to me. You got a good start there, I think, so
Yep.
that should maybe get them thinking about at least the context of stuff that we're planning to discuss, and maybe they'll come up with their own ideas too.
Yeah, I mean, some good things have come out of there. We've things have been brought to our attention that we just didn't see. Sometimes you have a blind spot. So, yeah. All right, so maybe that's what I'll do. I'll clean this up and shoot it around to the various chairs, and so they can chew on it at their next meeting in July and get back to us.
Sounds good to me.
Is this like a cookout or something?
It's really good with the grill, just so you know. It's in the kitchen.
It should be. I'm gonna advocate it for it, but no, normally it's this, but with them in the audience talking to us.
Potluck. There you go.
Yeah, right.
I got a big enough property.
Yeah.
I got porta potties and everything.
So, yeah, I think that's it for me.
All right, great.
It's gavel time.
Tracy, anything from you?
Can't think of anything.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is reviewing the master plan, site plan regulations, and zoning ordinances as time permits. I think tonight time doesn't permit. So next thing is approval of minutes. Do we want to tackle those? Actually, don't have them in front of me. Did everybody review them, or do we want to do that?
I
Yeah,
reviewed them because I wasn't here.
I
Annie?
reviewed them, they look
How do you
fine.
feel?
Which day? are we reviewing?
Our last meeting on June 10th, regular meeting, and then last week's moratorium public hearing, yeah.
I won't be able to vote on last week's, I wasn't here.
Yeah, that's okay.
So we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
getting at.
This is only two of us.
Does it, oh yeah, I guess even if it's 50-50, that wouldn't work. Okay, so we'll hold off on that one. We'll just do the June 10th meeting minutes then. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I reviewed these, and they were lengthy, but I didn't really find anything.
That's good.
Anybody else? I'd also just entertain a motion to,
I'll make
these
a
one.
motion that we approve the minutes from June 10th as received.
do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Alright.
All right, that passes unanimously. Okay, next up, our favorite agenda item.
Carrie makes a motion to adjourn.
All right, we've got a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Oop, we've got a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you all for your time.